Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, a show for women entrepreneurs who want to build, grow, and lead successful businesses and high-performing teams. I'm your host, Lindsay White, leadership coach and people strategy expert, here to bring you unplugged conversations with a variety of amazing guests who share expert advice and real actionable people strategies for your growing business. Ready to get unplugged? Let's jump in. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I'm your host, Lindsay White. And today's episode, I had originally intended to be on a little bit of a different topic. But what I wanted to do is we really launch into season 4 of the podcast. We've relabeled with the unplugged piece to make these conversations so available and authentic and real and raw. I wanted to start with a conversation today in honor of my friend, Heather Dumas, who tragically passed away in May of 2024. And she was all of those things. She was beautiful and strong and brave and authentic and real and raw. She had a beautiful laugh. She had an incredible zest for life. And she was incredibly adventurous. And that's what I loved about her. But one of the most important pieces of Heather, as I was reflecting on her incredible life, was her resilience. And so I thought that's what we would talk today about, is resilience, as we honor Heather and the incredible female founder that she was, and how passionate she was about her business, how passionate she was about supporting other females and particularly other female entrepreneurs. And Heather's focus was really about living your best life, being healthy, feeling well, feeling really strong and powerful as a woman, and particularly as a woman in business. And we know that resilience is a big part of that, because at every step in the journey, there are failures, there are missteps, there are missed opportunities. And it is our ability to be resilient that is so key to being a female founder. And so that's our topic today. We're going to explore resilience. And I'm here by myself. Today's going to be a solo episode. So I'm going to share some of my experiences of resilience and, in reflection of, again, what Heather brought to this world. And her incredible contributions. So before I started the show, I actually looked up, what is resilience? What's the dictionary definition? And what I found is that resilience is defined as the capacity to withstand or recover quickly from difficulties. Toughness, they use the word toughness, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. And so I thought that those two words were really important, this toughness and this elasticity. And so for me, resilience has always been the ability to bounce back. It is about being brave and courageous and forward moving in the face of obstacles. It is about finding the way to go over or under or around when there's a roadblock. And I think, my friend Heather really embodied that. She was incredibly resilient. And she was incredibly passionate. And so I think, that's really been important for me, especially right now, as I process the grief from losing her and losing her very, very suddenly. It was a very tragic way that she passed. And so, I'm really gathering all of my resilience right now. I'm really trying to be in that space where I can bounce back. And what do I do? I've been really thinking a lot about this. Like, how do you create resilience? How do you create the toughness and the elasticity, the bounce that you need in the bounce back? And I think there's a few things, and certainly some of these I learned from Heather. Heather was all about your physical wellness. And so, really this idea that we need to get back to our body. And I've been doing a lot of that. Now, that doesn't mean that you're, going to the gym and you're pumping it up every day. For me, it's actually meant quieting down. It's actually meant really sinking into my body. It's actually meant stretching and movement that is very gentle, Because, in fact, when we are in those spaces where we need to draw resilience and build it, I think we need to be gentle with ourselves, especially physically. So, a lot of what I've been doing has been, going for walks and really appreciating being in nature. I think being outdoors, especially now that it's nice out, it's summer, the birds are chirping, there's lots of, blooming going on, there's lots of different smells, lots of different sensations, lots of really beautiful sounds. So doing, adding more, exercise outside has been a big boost to my resiliency. And I recognize that I'm one of those people. I need more nature, and it's easy when you're an entrepreneur to get stuck inside your office, whether that office is like me and it's in your house, or whether you actually work in a physical space outside your home and for your business. It's really easy to get locked down at your desk. And so I think that's been number one for me is, get that exercise and be gentle about it when you are calling on your resilience, when you are feeling in that space where you're down and out, when you're at, kind of in that bottom of the well place. And I've certainly been experiencing myself that space in the last few weeks. And then getting outside, spending some time as much as you can. And, sometimes for me, there's not a lot of time. And so it's just spending a few minutes on the deck, breathing in the fresh air and really appreciating that lovely, beautiful fresh air, getting the wind in my face and just feeling that and experiencing that has certainly been really important for me. And just connecting in the moment. I think we get so caught up as entrepreneurs and business owners in the future. Maybe what's going wrong and how we need to fix it, or really planning. All of those things take us outside of the present. Even the reflection on losing someone that's really important in your life, and the opportunity to be outside with the sun on your face and the wind blowing in your hair, and just feeling and experiencing that, just being very present in just a few moments, has been really, really powerful for me. And many of you know that I really I love the positive intelligence operating system, and certainly spending 2 minutes a few times a day in that space of mindfulness has been really, really powerful for me, especially as I feel like my resilience is being tested right now. I think, the other piece is that movement. And so finding the movement that works for you. For some people, it's high energy movement. For me right now, it's been very slow, very intentional movements, but doing that at a regular interval. And just really actually counting all the movement, right? I think we only tend to count when we got our exercise clothes on and our runners. Well, what are the other movements during the day that you can really factor in? Even if it's just standing up at your desk and sort of rocking back and forth. Now, I'm not an expert like Heather was, but I know that every bit of movement we can get in, especially when we're in a very busy time, when we're feeling like our resilience is tested, can be really important to just, again, helping us call on some strength, build that elasticity so that we can bounce back better. I think the other thing that I've learned, and this is being very tested right now, is patience. Just being patient with myself has been challenging. I am high voltage. I am a get up and go, spark it up kind of girl. I am always driven and ready for the next adventure. I am all about connection and creating great relationships. And actually, right now, that doesn't feel right for me. And I know that in our businesses, we're always trying to network and create those collaborations. But I think we do have to have some patience with ourselves, that there is moments when our resilience is being tested, that we actually just need to embrace that. We need to move slowly. We need to have patience and kindness and grace for ourselves. We need to have empathy. And we need to ask others for that as well. And I've certainly been doing that in the last several weeks in my business. I've been very forward with people and said that, I've had a very close business friend pass away. And that I am going to be slow to respond. I am going to, take a little bit more time to get back. I am putting off conversations that just don't feel like now is the right time, because I do feel like my energy is tested. I do feel like my resilience is tested. In fact, I've been extremely exhausted in the last few weeks. And I do think that part of that is that grieving process. And I know that it's not linear. I think we all know enough about grief to know that you don't just move through the steps and stages one after the other. You cycle. You're on a roller coaster. You go up and down, and some days you're better and other days you're not. Well, in the last week or so, I really feel like my energy level has been, very much drained. Well, certainly part of that is the grief cycle that I have been going through, and just really processing that. And sometimes it's not processing it consciously. It's really happening behind the scenes. And I do think that we have to be patient with ourselves and just allow for the season of that, because we need to be able to be real and authentic in our business. And that's what I'm trying to share with you all today here on this conversation, on this podcast, is just being very real. That it's taken me, weeks. I was supposed to record this episode weeks ago. And it's taken me 3 weeks to actually really get to the place where I could actually hit record and feel good about it. I just didn't have the energy. I just did not have the space. I did not have the capacity. I really felt like my toughness was actually drained a little bit. I didn't feel like I had elasticity. I actually felt very brittle and very uninspired. And I think at moments in time in our businesses, we do feel uninspired. We do feel like, what am I doing here? We do question ourselves. And I'll tell you, I had that conversation with Heather. We would talk about these kinds of things. And that's what's so meaningful about our relationship is that, when you find that person, and especially when you work in business, that you can have those real, authentic conversations with about when you are feeling taxed, when you are feeling overwhelmed and exhausted, when you are feeling like perhaps things aren't going the way you had planned, the way you had intended. That's really challenging. And it's difficult because a lot of times, whether we're a solopreneur, even if we're working with a team like I have, I love my team. But I'm not going to talk to them about these kinds of things necessarily in the same way I would talk to another business owner. So I think that that's really important. When we need to build our resilience, is having those right people in our corner and being so patient and so kind with ourselves, and just very much listening to what do I need? What do I need right now? Is such a great question to ask. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know. And I think when you ask yourself, what do I need right now? And the answer is, I don't know. I think that's the right moment to pause. I think that's the right moment to get really present. I think that's the right moment to maybe put aside what you're doing and get outside and just experience something in nature, or go do some yoga, get present with your body, do a meditate, put a guided meditation on, spend some time just being very quiet, because I think as female entrepreneurs and business owners, one of our greatest gifts is our intuition. And I think our intuition links very much to our ability to be resilient, that toughness, that elasticity. And I think if we can get very quiet, I think if we can pause and we can get very present with ourselves and just be in the moment, not think about the shopping list, not think about the email list, not think about where the kids need to go after work today, not think about that it's Father's Day on the weekend. When we can get very calm and pause and get very quiet, and then we can reflect on questions like, what do I need? Sometimes the answer is, I need a break. Sometimes the answer is, I need a friend. Sometimes the answer is, I need a nap. And I think if we can get very quiet and we can call on our intuition, that inner leader that we all have, I think we know the answers. I think we get caught up in a lot of shoulds. I think we get caught up in a lot of what ifs. I think we get caught up in our own drive for success and our own, desire to serve. And all of those things are wonderful. I really do believe in them. I have all of those things too. But I think what happens is that we get very much caught up in all of those conversations, and we miss the conversation that comes from the heart. And that's that intuition. That's that inner leader that we have. And we can only hear that when we are very quiet and very present. And I'm feeling very emotional right now because I feel like my inner leader has actually gotten lost in some of these conversations over the last few weeks, as I have struggled with the passing of Heather, with some other road bumps in my business, with some health issues I'm facing. I'm feeling exhausted. I'm feeling completely worn out. And my emotions are very close to the surface. And so what I want to do is, extend that to you. If you are feeling like you are exhausted and overwhelmed and that your emotions are very close to the surface and you cannot hear that inner voice and what it is telling you to do, I want you to reach out. Please feel free to connect with me. Send me a DM, send me a message. My email is always in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram. But know that someone is there. If you don't feel like you have anyone else to talk to you about this, I've got time for you. Because there are so many people in my world, Heather included, who always had time for me. And I think that that is so key, is just having someone we can be real and authentic with. And again, that's why I felt like this was the show to record for today, really talking about that resilience. And one of the best things we can do when we're feeling like our resilience is depleted is actually talk to someone, find that person. And I also want to encourage you. I know for many of us, accessing mental health services feels awkward and strange and perhaps, again, overwhelming. I want you to know I talk with a professional. I have a therapist that I work with every second week. And it has been absolutely critical to me. Not only do I have my own coaches, I have several different people that help me with coaching because I practice what I preach. But I also work with a mental health professional. And I think that that is so important. If you are feeling like you are at the bottom of the well and you can't see how to get out, if you are feeling exhausted and overwhelmed and you don't know what to do next, I want you to reach out and access the mental health services in your world, in your part of the country, in your part of the universe. I want you to access those services. I want you to talk to someone. Or I want you to reach out and say to someone that's a really trusted advisor, I need that help. Can you help me? Can you help me find the right person? I think that it is so key. We can look after ourselves really well, but we have to be able to ask for help. And in fact, I think asking for help is an act of courage. You are being courageous when you ask someone else for their help. And the truth is, we've all had to ask for help. This is the secret. For so many of us, we feel like we have to be so brave and so courageous and so resilient all the time, and that we are the only one who is feeling crappy. We are only one who's feeling exhausted and overwhelmed. And that just is not true. We have all had this experience. Every single one of us has had these moments when we feel like we are being very tested in our life, very tested in our business. And we've all had to ask for help. That is the ironic part. Every single business owner has had to ask for help at some point. And so asking for help is not abnormal. It doesn't make you weird or strange. It doesn't make you a failure. It actually makes you tragically normal. And reaching out and saying, I need support, actually is a real act of courage that takes incredible tenacity and bravery. And just at that moment where we ask for help, whether we go to our family doctor and we say, I need someone, we call a trusted business friend, do you know someone? Whether we call a 1-800 number or a local access number and say, I need to talk to someone, that moment is when we are at our most courageous. And I will tell you, I'm getting emotional again because it's very close to the surface for me. I went to my family doctor yesterday because I am not feeling right. There is something not right with me. The level of exhaustion, the brain fog, a variety of symptoms, not feeling right. I had to make that call. I had to call the family doctor, got to get some medical testing going on. But I also spoke with very openly with my therapist and said, I'm not right. And I don't know if some of this is physical and some of this is emotional and some of this is spiritual, some of this is hormonal. Like, I'm not really sure. I can't quite sort it all out, but I need to call the pros in and you need to ask for help. So I want you to do that. If you don't do anything else after you walk away from this episode today, I want you to make the call. I want you to send the email or the text message. I want you to say to the right person, I need to talk. And then I want you to be honest. I want you to be honest about how you're feeling. You don't have to hide it. And I think that's one of the other things that we think is about being resilient is that we don't talk about it. That we just don't, we just get through it. We just push. We just grind it out. That's not resilience. That is ridiculousness. This idea that we just hustle harder and we just grind further and we just work more and we just drive forward. That's actually not showing toughness and it's not showing elasticity. In fact, I would tell you that those things are the opposite. Actually, what that shows is rigidity because when we cannot stop, when we feel like we can only move forward, when we feel like we can only put our foot on the gas more, when we feel like we have to grind and grind and grind, that actually is an act of real delusion. We're not helping ourselves. And in fact, we're not being flexible. We're not being elastic. We're actually being, far too rigid in our approach. And so this idea that in fact elasticity really allows us to be very flexible. It allows us to bend and stretch. I mean, if you think about it, an elastic band, it bends and stretches, it gets bigger, it gets smaller. It can be wrapped around in several different ways. If you think about a little bouncing ball, right? That ability to bounce back. Well, as the ball bounces up and down, it gets flatter, it expands, and that's what we need to do. So, this idea that we need to grind it out, we need to drive harder, we need to push through, that's so rigid, it's so strict. And it just doesn't allow us to be who we need to be truly deeply authentic, to feel what we really need to feel. And especially for me, as someone who works so closely with female entrepreneurs and small business owners, I think it's actually key that I really walk the talk, that I feel what I'm feeling, that I really get quite present with what's happening for me. Because in fact, that allows me to connect better with each and every one of you. And again, I am not an expert at all of these things, but I know enough to know and have been through enough of this before to know that I can come back stronger, that I will be okay, that things will work themselves out. I do have some faith and some trust that, I will be resilient. I have been in the past, and I know you have been too. We have a 100% track record of figuring it out, recovering, and moving forward even better. That much I know for sure. Because just like you, I've been through a number of moments in my life that have been really difficult. And this is one of them. This is one of them. The passing of my dear friend, some of these other pieces in my business that have not gone the way I wanted in the last few weeks, the end of some relationships, and, really my own physical needs. Man, that was not in my business plan at all this year. I got to tell you that. And I know that for each and every one of you that are listening, you've either been through moments like this, you're going through one with me right now, or you're going to have one in the future. And it absolutely is your ability to be resilient that will make all the difference in the world. And the question is, how are you going to build that resilience in the moments when you need it the most, but also in the moments when you are feeling great? And you make that decision for yourself. Every single one of us is very, very different in how we fill that cup, right? For some of us, it's really deeply investing in our community. For others, it's spending time with our family. For some of us, it's about investing in our learning because that's a big value for us. We fill our cup by learning and growing. It's going to look different for each and every one of us and how we do that. For me, it actually is spending time with the people that I love the most. Those are the people that fill me up, right? And that's, of course, my family, but it's also some of my closest friends. And there are some people in this world that absolutely fill my cup for me. And I hope I do the same for them. I mean, that's the whole idea, isn't it? So I want to encourage you to find those people and spend time with them in a way that's really meaningful for you, whether that's in a group, whether that's one on one, whether that is in a quiet space. For some of us, we just need to be alone. We actually need to go away and we need to deeply reflect. Some people I know love to journal. Other people I know love to read really inspirational books. It is really a very personal thing that we do to build some of that resilience. When we do that in the tough times, it'll pay off. And so I got to tell you, that's why I know that I'm feeling like my tank is a little empty right now, but my resilience factor is right there. And that is the boost that I'm going to need to get through. And you have the opportunity to build your resilience and then call on it when you need it the most. So I know this episode was not exactly what we thought it was going to be today, but I sure hope that this has been valuable for you. I got to tell you, it's actually been super cathartic for me to just talk about my friend Heather and her incredible value and what she contributed to my world, the resilience that I'm drawing from her right now. Because I think that's so important when we have those inspirational figures. And she was certainly one for me. Again, if you need to reach out, if you feel like your resilience is taxed, I always have time in my calendar. You can connect with me on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, through the website. Send me an email. And I would love to hear from you. Tell us about what your resilience factor is feeling like right now as we're at the middle of 2024. We're halfway through the year. Would love to hear from you and your reflections. And also, please, if you've enjoyed this episode, if you know someone else who's struggling, please share this with them. Leave us a 5-star review. Give us some feedback in the comments. We would really love that. Thank you again for joining me today on the Female Founder Unplugged podcast, and I'll see you again next week. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening as much as I did hosting this conversation. I feel so lucky that I get to connect with such amazing female entrepreneurs. And if you enjoyed today's session, would you do me a big favor? Would you hit subscribe and give this episode a 5-star review? I'd also love it if you would share with your friends. We've got a goal here at the Female Founder Unplugged podcast to impact 1,000 female founders. And with your help, we can really amplify the message. Thanks again for being a part of the show. And don't forget to connect with me at highvoltageleadership.ca. We'll see you next week.